on Network Africa. United Nations World Meteorological Organization says most of the deaths from Libya floods could have been avoided. Morocco residents recount their experiences after deadly quake. Some find shelter in damaged school. Plus, a joint statement from the UAE, UK, Brazil and others call for warring sides in Sudan to take full responsibility for preventing any acts of war crimes. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We begin in Libya, where the death toll from devastating floods continues to rise. Casualties that could have been avoided, according to the head of the World Meteorological Organization, Petri Talas. He believes the disaster was worsened by the political divisions in a country with no functional meteorological service that could have issued early disaster warnings.
It seems differences in opinion can cost lives, as rescue operations are complicated by political fractures in the country of 7 million people that has been at war, on and off, with no strong central government since the NATO-backed uprising that toppled Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. This is the opinion of the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, who says lives were lost to lack of planning.
Met service is practically not functioning because they are not able to operate, and their observing network has been very much destroyed. The IT systems have been destroyed, and although Libya used to be a wealthy country with fairly modern services in the past, but due to this inaction of the meteorological service, the flooding event just came there, and there was no evacuation taking place because there was not the proper early warning services in place.
An internationally recognized government of national unity, GNU, is based in Tripoli in the west, while a parallel administration operates in the east, including Derna. Talas says WMO had previously been in touch with Libyan authorities to assist them in reforming the country's meteorological system, but the efforts were hampered by a dire security situation. With thousands dead or missing and tens of thousands displaced in the aftermath of floods in Libya brought on by Storm Daniel, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is soliciting international aid.
I'm profoundly distressed that thousands of lives have been so brutally swept away in eastern Libya. And so many more people have lost their loved ones, their homes, their communities, and their access to basic needs. Storm Daniel is yet another lethal reminder of the catastrophic impact that the changing climate can have on our world. I call on all Libyan political actors to overcome deadlocks and divisions and to act collectively in ensuring access to relief. This is a time for unity of purpose. All those affected must receive support, without regard for any affiliations. It is important that particular care is taken to ensure protection of groups in vulnerable situations who are rendered even more at risk in the aftermath of such a disaster. Human rights need to be at the center of the response to this heartbreaking situation. We need to invest in prevention and resilience. I stand in solidarity with the people of Libya, with my deepest heartfelt condolences to those who are mourning irreplaceable losses.
Storm Daniel, which wrought devastation across the Mediterranean in the past week, killed 15 people in central Greece, where it dumped more rain than previously recorded before sweeping across to Libya. Global warming means the region may have to brace up in the future for increasingly powerful storms of this kind, the Mediterranean's equivalent of a hurricane, known as a medicane. Meanwhile, aid donated from several parts of Libya is slowly trickling into the devastated city of Derna, days after the storm. A torrent unleashed by a powerful storm burst dams on Sunday night and cascaded down a seasonal riverbed that bisects the city, washing multi-story buildings into the sea with sleeping families inside. Confirmed death tolls given by officials so far have varied, but all are in the thousands, with thousands more on lists of the missing. Derna Mayor Abdulmenam Al-Gethi says deaths in the city could get to 20,000 based on the extent of the damage.
Heartbreaking. Well, the VOA's Edward Uranian joins us now from Cairo in Egypt. Hi there, Edward.
Hello, Joker.
Yeah, so there are fears that the death toll from the flooding in Libya could surpass 20,000, as we just reported. And the UN's World Meteorological Organization is saying that the deaths could have been avoided because the country was politically divided. Were there no warnings at all or evacuations whatsoever from the authorities?
Yes, the Libyan Meteorological Service issued a warning 2 days before the storm came that a bad storm was coming. In terms of evacuating, it's problematic as to where they would have evacuated to if they had known that they were going to be washed away. I don't think anyone could have predicted that those two dams were going to collapse. So the UN official is pushing the point a little bit too far because it has nothing, dams collapsing has nothing to do with the political situation.
And so how do people really evacuate when, a storm of this kind is coming up? What usually happens in a country like Libya?
Well, they don't have a very long history of having such bad storms. And I think in recent years, they've built on this dry seasonal waterbed, riverbed that only floods when there's a bad storm. So if you build buildings closer to the riverbed, you're more likely to get swept away. Whereas 30 years ago, if you had such a similar flood, you wouldn't have gotten washed away since your buildings were much farther away. But all that being said, I think that a country like Libya doesn't really have a lot of planning for evacuations. Here in Egypt, we don't really have plans for evacuations either. If a dam broke on the Nile, say the dam down in Aswan broke and the Nile was being flooded, I don't know where we'd go, really. We would just have to wait it out and see where we could hide. I think that's what many people did, although it happened at a time when they weren't expecting the waters to be coming. So really, they were not able to go anywhere, most people.
Yes, and we understand that, story buildings, houses were washed away as the storm hit. How is the search operation going? I can imagine that, the hopes of finding survivors are fading. So they're just looking for, bodies buried under rubble. How is that going?
Well, I was surprised to see the Arab news channels saying that they had found 591 people under buildings that were alive. I'm amazed at that figure, and I'm amazed that they would be alive at this point. But that's what I'm seeing, and that's what they're reporting. But of course, that's a very small number when you consider that maybe 10,000 people are missing. And I'm just citing one of the figures that the Libyan government people are putting out. It's anyone's guess how many people are missing since at least a quarter of that city of Darna got swept away. And there are other cities, Susa, Shahat, Baida, that were badly damaged as well, not to mention Benghazi. So what the ultimate death toll is going to be is anyone's guess, assuming we're able to find these bodies, which may not be the case since many have been washed to sea.
We understand various countries have been distributing aid to the flood-hit areas. Are authorities making sure those in need are really getting the aid? Walk us through this process, with many people having lost their homes and a lot of people having lost members of their family.
Well, you could argue that people are getting the aid that shouldn't be getting the aid, and people that need the aid are not getting the aid. But I did see video of bread being distributed to people. It seemed to be going in an orderly manner. the various Arab countries, including Egypt and Tunisia, were sending in, and Jordan were sending in crews with rescue equipment as well as medical and food supplies. So it's anyone's guess where that is all going. Perhaps some of the forces on the ground are distributing them in an unfair manner. You have to keep in mind that Derna is not a very popular city to many people, since it's an Islamist hotbed. So there's some people who have prejudices against it and might be trying to short circuit whatever aid is going in. But the parliament also, the Libyan parliament, voted to allocate 10 billion dinars, I believe that's about $2 billion, to relief for the people who are badly hit. And once again, it's anyone's guess where that's going to go when it ultimately goes.
Well, aside from helping with, aid, with the much-needed aid for Libya, is Egypt willing to take in refugees from flood-hit areas? What are the authorities saying as regard this in helping their neighbors?
Well, Egypt has taken in a lot of Sudanese refugees. It generally takes people at the border when they have visas and things like that. Libya has been more lax because it's a wealthy country in general, more wealthy than Egypt, and you've historically had more people going into Libya from Egypt than Egypt into Libya than Libya into Egypt. I think the border versus Egyptian generally.
Yeah, we've been listening to the VOA's Edward Uranian speaking to us from Cairo, Egypt, on the devastating floods in neighboring Libya. And coming up after the break, women in Niamey cook meals to support anti-French protesters. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. More deadly environmental issues as we continue on Network Africa's hopes of finding more survivors in Morocco's devastating earthquake fades. Residents are recounting their experiences, which include finding shelter in abandoned schools just to feel safe after their homes were ruined in the 6.8 magnitude quake. Others are trying to pick up the pieces as they've lost everything to the incident. Here's more in this report.
In this tiny village of Otagri in Morocco, survivors take refuge in a local school after losing their homes in the 6.8 magnitude quake that struck the high Atlas Mountains. Inside the rooms with huge cracked walls and cold temperature, survivors are gathered, some of whom sleep on the ground, fearing abnormal sounds and traumatized by the massive earthquake. We suffered, and we are still sad. We have no food, nowhere good to sleep. It's not just about the collapsed houses that we are sad. A house can be rebuilt later, but I lost my normal life. Everything from our life is gone. We have nothing to do. We have nowhere to escape. If death comes, then it will come. We are suffering. Everything is falling apart. Ekroch also complained that the children are losing their studies due to the number of people that are taking shelter in schools. This school is for little kids, she says. Otagri was almost entirely flattened, and where 4 people were killed. Homeless survivors have spent 5 nights since the quake, sleeping outside in the schoolyard, one of the few spaces not covered in rubble. Elsewhere, some villagers who've lost everything are fending for themselves amid the ruins of their homes, with roads still blocked by landslides. 19-year-old student Imani Ait says she was studying in First City when she heard the news of the earthquake that had hit her hometown of Talat Nyako. 10 of her relatives lost their lives, including her 12-year-old brother.
My brother was a very kind boy. All the neighbors knew him and cried over him when he died, because whenever anyone asked him for something or do them a favor, he never refused. Or even if he saw a woman holding something heavy, He would go to help her. He did well at school. He just passed the second year of secondary school this year. He passed with 14 out of 20 points to move to the third year. 2 days before the earthquake, he enrolled in school and bought books to start studying.
In the midst of the devastation and trauma, villagers are receiving medical attention and trauma support at a field hospital in Asni. In Asni, a transport and shopping hub for surrounding villages, this military field hospital has been treating patients since Monday. People here are not only receiving medical care, eye care and surgeries, and are being supported for trauma reasons. Alongside Asni's hospitals were rows of large blue and green tents provided by the government for displaced people. Among the tents, children are bouncing on a trampoline. The 6.8 magnitude quake killed at least 2,901 people and injured 5,530, according to the latest official figures, making it Morocco's deadliest since 1960 and the most powerful since at least 1900.
As the war in Sudan shows no sign of ending, United Nations officials are calling for more regional and international help to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. Over 100 people have been killed in the West Darfur region alone, and more than 20 million people are experiencing high levels of acute food insecurity.
I'm encouraged that the African Union and IGAD have harmonized their respective roadmaps and efforts to facilitate a political solution. I also commend the Sudan's neighboring states summit and the resultant ministerial mechanism. Coherence of regional and international efforts is still needed, though. But let me say that this conflict is leaving a tragic legacy of human rights abuses. Indiscriminate attacks against civilians committed by the warring parties constitute gross violations of human rights.
It is no hyperbole to say that after 5 months of brutal and merciless war, as the SRSG has just noted, the people of Sudan are facing a crisis of epic and tragic proportions. Let me again stress that almost half the population of Sudan, more than 20 million people, are experiencing high levels of food insecurity. A country with a very healthy breadbasket. We are seeing a substantial rise in malnutrition rates, and more than 6 million Sudanese are just one step away from famine.
In its interim report, the panel informed the committee of the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation in Darfur. The intensified fighting, in particular in El Janina, led to the displacement of the civilian population to the neighboring countries. Schools, mosques, and hospitals were also targeted, while homes, international non-governmental organizations, and UN compounds were looted.
Meanwhile, a joint statement from 11 countries is calling for the parties in Sudan to take full responsibility for preventing war crimes. The statement was echoed by these countries, namely Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, France, Gabon, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom, as well as the United States.
The ongoing conflicts in Sudan have resulted in an alarming increase in instances of conflict-related sexual violence, particularly affecting women and children. Reports of rape, including gang rape, sexual slavery, abduction, and sexual harassment, have been prominent throughout the conflict. Women and girls, particularly in the Darfur region, are subject to horrifying acts of sexual and reports of gender-based violence as a tactic of war to instill fear and control in the population and assert dominance over local communities. The parties to the conflict must take full responsibility for preventing any acts of sexual and gender-based violence committed by their members and should issue command orders that prohibit sexual violence. Allegations of these crimes must be investigated and perpetrators must be held accountable.
Thank you.
Elsewhere, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo has penned a touching tribute to the late Zulu nationalist Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi of South Africa. The tribute reads in part, "It's with a profound sense of sympathy that I write on behalf of my family and on my own behalf to commiserate with the Zulu royal family and the entire good people of South Africa over the painful transition of one of the greatest sons of Africa, a frontline leader, an activist, an indomitable fighter for the liberation of South Africa from apartheid and oppressive racialism." He adds that Prince Buthelezi was a statesman par excellence and a tireless advocate of the preservation of mystique of Africa's moral and cultural values. Prince Mangosuthu Gasha Buthelezi was a South African politician and Zulu prince who served as the traditional prime minister to the Zulu royal family from 1954 until his death in 2023. And finally on the program, a group of Niamey women are not relenting in their show of support to demonstrators who have continued a 6th day of protest at the French military airbase in Niger's capital, Niamey. It's all hands on deck as a variety of meals are prepared to boost the morals of protesters who are constantly calling for the withdrawal of French troops in Niger Republic.
Amidst the ongoing protests in Niamey, a group of women volunteers has emerged to support the demonstrators in front of the French squadron base. These women organized to provide food and hot beverages to sustain the crowd as the demonstrations entered their 6th day, with protesters demanding the departure of French troops. The footage shows the group preparing food while another team distributes it to the protesters. For the organizer, Zubairuddin Susu, these gestures go a long way.
I was going to bring them what little I could, and I thought about cooking, and that's what inspired me so much. It all started from there. I started with a kitchen of 100 dishes, 200 dishes, 300 dishes that I cooked with my sisters. Now we're up to 5,000 dishes a day.
Everyone has to give their all. It's a joint fight. We all have to do our bit. You don't have to wonder where to start, no matter how much. You find a way to help, with the aim of boosting and helping. All together, we're fighting against the French base.
On July the 26th, a military coup took place in Niger, resulting in the removal of President Mohamed Bazoum and the installation of General Abdurrahman Chiani, the leader of the Presidential Guard, as the new head of state. The military rulers announced also the cancellation of military agreements with France. Tensions between Niger and France have escalated since France declared the junta illegitimate, leading to protesters calling for the 1,500 French troops stationed in Niger to depart. Rallies in support of the junta have been recurring, with several demonstrations in front of the French military base.
That's Network Africa today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers. Bye for now.